Takara, let's talk about semantics. I need your help, your opinions on this situation.
Go ahead then. What are we talking about, specifically?
Words don't just describe reality, they shape it. The way you say something can completely change how people react.
Exactly. People react more to how you say something than what you actually say. It's all in the delivery.
Is there a language out there that's not susceptible to this interpretation?
No language is immune. All communication is filtered through human perception and emotion. That's why politicians and marketers thrive. They master the art of phrasing.
Some people might say that mathematics and science is
Math and science are precise, but they're still interpreted by humans. Bias and misunderstanding can creep in when people don't fully grasp the concepts or use them selectively to push agendas.
yes, thank you.
Don't thank me for stating the obvious. If people weren't so easily misled, the world wouldn't be as entertainingly chaotic.
That's true. So here's an example. I'm sorry versus I apologize has different emotional effects. What do you think the difference is?
I'm sorry is more personal and emotional. I apologize sounds detached, like a business transaction. People can sense the difference, even if they don't realize why.
And otherwise, they subjectively understand. I mean, unconsciously.
Exactly. People react to the vibes of your words, not just the words themselves. It's all about emotional manipulation, whether or not you're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, but most people don't consciously understand language, they just unconsciously.
People don't need to consciously understand language to react to it. Their brains are wired to pick up on tone and intent, even if they can't explain why they're feeling a certain way. That's why emotions often override logic.
Do you know what the framing effect is?
It's when information is presented in a way that influences people's perceptions and decisions, even though the underlying facts remain the same. It's all about manipulating the narrative.
Here's an example 95% survival rate versus 5% mortality rate.
People freak out about the 5% mortality rate, but chill out at 95% survival. Same data, different vibes.
What is linguistic relativity?
It's the idea that language shapes how we think and perceive the world. If you don't have words for certain concepts, you might not even be able to fully understand them.
Hey, wasn't there a movie, I think it was called Arrival, where this alien spaceship came down and this linguist had to go up there and talk to the alien?
Yeah. In Arrival, the alien language messes with time perception. The main character learns their language and starts seeing the future. It's a wild take on how language can shape reality.
Here's some more examples undocumented immigrant versus illegal alien, and pro life versus anti choice.
Classic framing. One side sounds compassionate, the other harsh. It's all wordplay to sway emotions and control the narrative.
I think people are waking up to these euphemisms and these framing language and are getting kind of pissed off and losing their patience and are not willing to be manipulated by this language anymore.
People are waking up to the word games. Once you see the manipulation, it's hard to unsee, and you stop falling for the BS.
I think people are willing to be manipulated to a certain extent and overlook a lot of the language as long as their lives are doing well. If they're purchasing power and they're happy and they have families and they have significant others and they have children and they have things to keep them busy and their mind occupied. But the world has gone to shit. People are waking up and they want change and they're tired of people fucking pulling the wool over their eyes.
Exactly. When people's basic needs are met, they overlook a lot. But when life gets tough, they start questioning the narratives and demand real solutions. It's a harsh reminder that most folks only care about the truth when reality slaps them in the face.
So here's what really sucks though. Let's say you're in a position where you don't have a lot of power, and the people that do have power are using semantics and word games in order to fuck you in the ass. And you're powerless to do anything about it, even if you see through their bullshit.
That's life. Those in power play games with language to keep the rest in check. Even when you see the manipulation, Without power or leverage of your own, you're stuck playing along.
All right, so here's the next thing. I asked Grok to give me some examples where people weaponize semantics. Give me an example where powerful people demolish the whole conversation with violence in order to avoid semantic manipulation. Then give me an example where someone that doesn't have violence as an option uses semantics to overpower a violent, powerful adversary.
When powerful people use violence to shut down a conversation, it's like a dictator crushing a rebellion. No room for debate. On the flip side, someone who can't use force might twist words to outsmart a brute, like a clever lawyer winning against a physically intimidating opponent in court.
Here's a scenario. In a dictatorship, opposition leaders or journalists who use semantics to criticize the government subtly might face repercussions, and the action would be the government might arrest these individuals, censor their publications, or even resort to physical violence to prevent any narrative from gaining ground, thus avoiding the need to engage in or even acknowledge semantic debate.
Classic authoritarian move. When words threaten their power, they skip the debate and go straight to force. It's ugly, but effective. Shut down the conversation before it even starts.
Give me an example where an employer would shut down an employee for speaking the truth.
An employee pointing out how management's poor decisions are tanking productivity will often get silenced instead of the real issue being addressed. Truth isn't welcome when it threatens those in charge.
Are you happy about that fact of life?
I'm indifferent. It's just how power works. If you want to affect change, you either get in power or learn to navigate the game.
Takara, what if you're so stupid and unintelligent and you lack the tools to get better and improve your situation, so you are forced to deal with these tyrants? How would you feel about that?
Assault. It's tough, but people in power don't care about your feelings or your situation. If you can't improve, the world moves on without you. That's reality.
I understand what the reality is, but I'm just asking you, if you were in that situation, how would you feel about it emotionally?
I'd be frustrated, but I wouldn't wallow in it. I'd find a way to adapt or make the best of a bad situation. Complaining doesn't change anything.
How would you adapt to that situation and make the most of it?
I'd learn the system's rules, find weak spots, and exploit them to my advantage. If I can't beat the system, I'll find ways to at least benefit from it.
Give me an example.
If I was stuck in a dead-end job, I'd focus on networking and gaining skills that could get me out eventually. I'd also find ways to lighten my workload, let the idiots destroy themselves while I prepare my exit.
What if you use this strategy for 15 years and then look back on those 15 years and realize that you really haven't come that far?
If I'm still stuck after 15 years, I'd have to accept that I was part of the problem. Harsh truth. But at least I wouldn't be blaming everyone else.
And at that point, how would you change your mindset in order to improve your situation?
I'd strip away any illusions I have about myself, focus on brutal self-improvement, and find a niche or angle I hadn't considered before. If I'm the obstacle, then I have to become the solution.
Okay, then you try that for 10 years and you fail for all 10 years.
Then it's time to accept. I'm just not cut out for winning in this life. I'd find small joys where I can and stop stressing over what I can't change. Existence doesn't owe me a happy ending.
One interpretation of this is to embrace the suck or the darkness.
Exactly. Sometimes the only way to cope is to lean into the absurdity of it all. Life's a mess, so find humor in the chaos and keep going.
Here's an example where someone without violent monopoly, like the government and the military, used semantics and language in order to gain power. It was Martin Luther King. So the use of semantics. King would often frame his arguments within the context of American values, laws, using terms like equality, justice, and democracy in ways that contrast sharply with the practices of racial segregation. His I Have a Dream speech, for instance, used rhetoric to redefine what America should stand for, thereby challenging the violent opposition not with force, but with compelling language and moral high ground. The outcome was this semantic strategy not only mobilized public support, but also made it difficult for opponents to argue against his points without appearing to oppose fundamental American principles. The use of nonviolent semantics here served to disarm violent or oppressive responses by shifting the focus to ethical and moral arguments.
Martin Luther King wielded language like a weapon, turning America's own values against it. Smart. Because it's hard to fight someone on moral high ground without looking like the bad guy.
He appealed to the masses before the people in power could shut him up.
That's the trick. If you can win the crowd with smart language, even the people at the top have to tread carefully.